Alright, what is going on, guys? So today we're going to be installing a custom steering wheel setup onto my daily driven E36 M3 sedan. This is going to be a DIY. I just thought it'd be a little bit more fun to freehand the intro. So we're going to be installing an NRG short hub, a quick release, and this beautiful Momo steering wheel. I will be doing an unboxing on this steering wheel. It is going to go live tomorrow, but it is unlisted right now for the day this video comes out. I will leave the link in the description to watch that for you guys who just kind of watch my videos regardless of whether it's useful to you or not, because a lot of the DIYs, initially the people who are watching it are the people who just kind of randomly watch my videos every time I post one anyways, so it's a little bit of fan service to you guys. But if you're looking for a DIY on how to install this, we are going to be installing all this fun stuff. So these are some of the wires to make the horn setup work. Short hub, and then a quick release is kind of optional. So let's get to it. Alright, so step one is going to be to disconnect the battery. The reason for this is, one, we're going to be taking off the airbag, and the airbag system will stay live for like 10 to 15 minutes after you disconnect the battery. So wait 10, 15, 20 minutes after you disconnect the negative, because we are going to be taking off the negative. We're going to leave the positive alone. Don't disconnect the battery, then immediately start working on it, because if you mess something up, or you ground something out incorrectly, or you take it off in the wrong way, you're going to get a face full of airbag, and that is not a good way to live, my friend. So it's a 13 millimeter. And we'll tuck that down, and the waiting begins. Alright, so now that we've been waiting for 15 to 20 minutes, it is time to start taking the steering wheel off. Now the first step, there should be a screw right here. There should be a Phillips. My car does not have one for some reason, so I don't get to do that step, so lucky me. I'm going to take a little pick. You could use a flathead also, and just kind of pry apart these panels on the side here, because we need this guy to kind of clip down like that. Sure, that works. Alright, so next up on the back of the steering wheel, we have these little holes right here. There's one on that side, and there is one on the adjacent side. Those guys are T25, and it does need to come out, so we're going to take those out real quick. So I got a little quarter driver with a little bit on it, and then I got my T25. Now this bit won't go deep enough, so if I have it recessed, it's going to be too short. So I'm going to stick the bit kind of out like that, so I can get a little bit more reach to it. Alright, there's our airbag. So on the back side, you're going to have this little orange clip on the airbag. There we go. So for this orange connector right here, this guy actually twists, and then he's going to come straight down like that, and then you can pinch the tabs on the sides and pull them apart like that. So as for getting this bolt off, like we did in the install video where we installed Alex's steering wheel, we are going to be using an impact to remove this. You don't have to use an impact to remove that, but taking this bolt on and taking this bolt off, there's a couple of very important things you need to remember. The first one is have your steering wheel dead straight. When you change your steering wheel, your car should drive and the alignment should be exactly the same. Changing the steering wheel is not going to change anything on your vehicle's alignment. That being said, if your car drove straight before and you change your steering wheel and your steering wheel is off to the left, that is not alignment. It is alignment on the steering wheel, not on the alignment of the car. So don't improperly install a steering wheel and then correct the vehicle alignment, toe, and all that stuff to compensate for your improper installation. You should have your steering wheel dead straight. If your car had a little bit left before, it should have a little bit left after. You need to install it where the steering wheel was. And also, do not try and install your steering wheel to compensate a bad alignment. That is also really bad form, so make sure it's dead straight. The second one is getting this bolt off. The steering wheel has a lock do not use the lock to break that. So don't put a wrench on it and then crank it over and have it hold itself to break that bolt. That is a really good way to break your steering lock, and you can break other steering rack components. Because your steering rack uses a multiplication in gear sizes, the steering wheel movement here puts a lot of force on the rack itself, and so you can damage components that way. So don't take your rack all the way to the lock on the left side, not the key lock, but the actual steering lock, and use that. And don't use the key lock here because you'll break it. You need to hold it in place and then loosen that nut, or you can just use an impact. So word of caution, if you use the steering lock to break it and your steering lock breaks, get fucked. If you crank your steering wheel all the way to the side for the actual steering lock and use that and you break your rack, get fucked. So word of caution. And this Johnny is a 16 mil. So I'm gonna hold the wheel tight. Crack her loose. A lot of the times the steering wheels themselves won't slide off very nicely. This one does, and Alex's did for some reason too, but sometimes they're on there really freaking tight. So what you can do is leave the nut on and pull really hard. And so that way when it finally gives, it doesn't hit you in the face. It just hits out on the bolt. So that was the case with my convertible when we put the steering wheel on it. The steering wheel was like seized. And now our wheel should be able to come off. So I guess the idea of the short hub is that section there is allow you to install your clock spring onto it. Kind of like that. I don't, however, think it was meant for this clock spring. With Alex's clock spring on his car, if I remember correctly, it had like 3 or 4 wires, like a little wire block, like where that kind of thing was sticking out, and that would have stuck through here. And I also believe that his clock spring bolted from the back, not from the front, like this does. So I don't think this clock spring is going to work for the short hub. So this is a 325i steering wheel clock spring setup. As you can tell, it's very different than the one from my M3. So I think we're going to pull this one apart and make it work. This is supposed to be the setup. There you go, got your clock spring. So here's the short hub with the 325i clock spring installed. Unfortunately, there are some errors with this setup. So unfortunately, this thing wasn't designed as well as it should have been. So like that is not threaded, and it's not that size, so we're not going to be able to ground that out like that, which is whatever, because we're probably going to have to use a different style ground anyways. This is working. I repaired this wire because it was damaged. None of these airbag lines are going to be used out. The clock spring is actually bigger than the hub, so I can't get it to bolt on correctly, so I only got one bolt in there. That guy will hold us over, I guess. He's going to have to, but that's probably going to be it. So we got our power wire coming in here, so that's going to go to yellow on this guy, which is going to plug into brown, and then black right here is going to have to go to ground. Alright, got my spacer in place. We are going to install our clock spring. That going down. Of course, this airbag wire is not going to get plugged in. I guess we could plug it in, it won't really make a difference. So we're going to plug that in, which is our power. So key on power for our horn. So that should be working. So this is a grounding plate. So this little Johnny gets sandwiched between here and this thing when we bolt it down. Like that. I think that's a little bigger one. I think we should have a smaller one. And go from there onto the tab, like that. So now we have our ground, and then this is going to plug into our power which is coming off of our 325i clock spring. Alright, so I got our ground wire and our power wire all plugged in on that. I just wanted to make sure that we could get that dialed in. I'm going to put our big bolt in now. So this probably does have a torque spec, and when we did Alex's car we just kind of tightened it as much as we could, but we had the steering wheel to kind of hold the leverage. We do not on this, so I'm going to hold it as best as I can, and I'm just going to zap it a couple of times. That should be good. It pressed it on pretty good. We are already modifying this, so I don't really feel that bad. Plus this was an old clock spring that we weren't using. There we go. And just for reference, none of these wires are plugged in to anything on the car. So this blue one is a ground. For some reason it's blue. And then these two are our airbag, which the connection is right here and they're not plugged in. So I'm not going to plug in that connector, so I don't really feel bad having loose wires like that. Just know it's not proper form. And now we can install this Johnny. So I'm just snugging these right now. I'm not going to really tighten them down too much in case we need to make an adjustment to the hub. I'm pretty sure I got it where it was. We're just going to take it for a quick spin after we get it all dialed in and make sure that our wheel is not off. Okay. Alright, now our quick release can go into place. Alright, so now I'm going to take my horn button out and we're going to install the wheel. I am, however, going to put our undercover back on, which is going to be a lot easier now that there's not a big old steering wheel in the way. Alright. That clip is broken and I'm still missing that screw. Alright, so we have yellow going to power, and now the problem I have right now is that I have a male connector there and a male connector on the horn. So what I did was I took one of my female connector things and literally broke it off, and so I kind of want to just like try and sandwich both of them into one connector, if that makes sense. So if I could just open this up just a tiny bit. Oh yeah. Look at that. That is some male on male action for you boys right there. So that should be our horn, all dialed in and wired. Ta-da! There we go. And now we should have a functioning clock spring. My airbag light is not on for some reason. I think something in that is wrong because it never comes on anyway, which is cool. So I still get to keep my perfectly clean dash. To lock, zero lock. Sweet, we have a working horn on our quick release. That is very nice. So now we're gonna go drive it to make sure that it is straight. we are going straight. Very nice. So if you got it off, it would probably be like a little tiny bit off. It's not going to be like 90 degrees out. It's going to be like a couple of teeth off. But straight is straight in this case, which is excellent. The only thing is I have a little bit of something in the clock spring is hitting. You can hear it. Alright, so I figured out what that clunking was. It was the internal clock spring moving with the steering column as opposed to the mount. So you can see it rotates a little bit. And so what you're hearing was it clunking. Now this being a 325i clock spring does not have a mounting point. So like the default, the stock clock spring has a little dowel that kind of holds this backing part into place. The clock spring on this is completely different from the clock spring that came out of the car. So of course this install went too well not to use zip ties, so I just zip tied one of its little tabs over to my airbag little harness there. And it's not going to be perfect. Obviously it still moves before the clock spring starts actually spinning, but it's better than nothing, and so hopefully we shouldn't have any clunking going on. Alright, so that is it for our steering wheel install. Of course, we got a working horn. The car is off right now, but we do have a working horn. With that, we do have a clock spring installed. So we do have self-canceling turn signals and a horn that works. I don't know how much more else you could really want out of a nice steering wheel setup like this. A lot of setups do not have self-canceling turn signals or a working horn, so I think that's pretty nifty. I'm glad this turned out really well. The only thing we had problems with was getting that clock spring to mount correctly. But aside from that, we're dialed in. Thank you guys so much for watching. Keep it fresh, and I'll see you guys later.
We are dreaming in the dark. We are nothing more than dust. Search but you stay lost. We are reaching for the stars, but we're making this too hard. And I wonder where you are.
And I don't understand why I always end up with freaking steering wheel setups that the turn signals are miles from the steering wheel, but I'm about it. This steering wheel setup looks super mint. It's just 6 miles to every one of the controls, which is fun, but yep. I don't know why I always end up with steering wheel setups that are like 4 miles from all my control setups. Like, look how far away that is from everything. Like, go sit in there and put your hands on the wheel and reach for the turn signal. It's 1.5 miles. It's the same way on the bucket. It's on the bucket because it's the hub. I know it is.
Hey, I gotta turn left. You already don't use your fucking blinker ever.
Yeah, but like...
This is you using your blinker. That's literally what you do, I guarantee it.